Hey everyone, I'm Katie. I'm the director of programming here at Wicked Queer, and welcome to the virtual Q&A for up and coming filmmakers. I kind of took the reign of this program when I came into Wicked Queer about 6 years ago because I'm a filmmaker myself, and I remember my first film that was in a festival and being able to see it on the screen, and it was my thesis film, and it was just this really amazing feeling, and to be able to know that someone watched it, liked it enough, and selected it to be screened. So I've really taken pride in this curating this program over the years, and sometimes I just can't believe all these films are actually from students or from first-time filmmakers. It's absolutely amazing and crazy what the young people can do these days. So I have three of them here today, and we're just going to talk about their films, and I have some questions. So first, if we can go around and maybe you guys can just say what you did on the film and maybe a little synopsis of the film. Samantha, we can start with you.
Sure. Thank you for having me. We're so excited to have Seasick as a part of the festival. My name's Sam Scolarici. I was the producer on Seasick, and I'm really sorry for the loud traffic in the background.
No worries.
But Seasick is about a teenager named Sadie, who is questioning her sexuality and unfortunately is outed before she is expected. And it's kind of navigating that while working on the ferries as a deckhand.
Eli, you?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. My name is Eli Zazovsky. It is very late here. I'm in Tel Aviv, so I hope what I say makes
all good.
in advance. I am the writer and director of Mazel Tov, which was my thesis film in undergrad. It's basically a reimagining of my bar mitzvah, the day one becomes a man, and according to Jewish tradition. And it's a meditation on the idea of becoming a man in Israel. Yeah, that I would say that's the shortest synopsis that I have.
Great. And Maddie?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. My name is Maddie Billock. I am the director and animator for Galatea. Galatea was made as my junior year film while getting my animation degree at MassArt. It's a short lesbian retelling of the myth, the Greek myth of Pygmalion and Galatea. It's about a girl who finds a stained glass window of a goddess and ends up falling in love with her.
Awesome. So I'm just going to start by asking, Samantha, how did you get involved with the project? And when you read the script, were you just like immediately on board? Because I was going back and forth because I also curate the comedy section. So I was like going back and forth of where to place this because it was most of it was funny. And then you felt her anxiety throughout. But I just love to know how you got involved.
Well, thank you so much for responding in that way, because I feel like that's exactly what Lindsay, the director, was hoping the reaction that she would get. But she is actually my partner. So we work very closely together. I'm the producer, she's director. I ended up loving the script. I think I would have helped her with it anyway. But I think her idea of using this world of the ferries, which is actually a job that she had as a teenager. Everyone asks if it was a true story. It didn't actually happen to her, but she did work on the Fire Island ferries, and which it was a choice to not include Fire Island, because in New York, usually when you say Fire Island, people are like, oh, that's the queer capital of New York. And it is to a certain extent. There's a large part of Fire Island that represents the LGBTQ plus community, and there's a part that is very conservative. So there's a huge juxtaposition. So the choice to not make it the Fire Island ferries is to highlight the fact that Long Island still has some, and I think the rest of the world still has a lot of work to do with how they treat anyone within that community. And I just thought it was a beautiful idea to focus on this issue in such a unique world and kind of use that the ferry as a vessel, literally and figuratively, of a way for her to navigate her emotions and her feelings around what has happened in the film.
I know, because it was so up and down. You're like, oh, it's not going to go through. Oh, it's going to go through. And then she jumps at the ending. Like, I loved it. It was just like, oh, wait, it's waterproof.
Yeah, thank you. That was the reaction that we were really hoping for. And honestly, something that we hoped was relatable. Or most Lindsay she had hoped that it was something that everyone could relate to. Everyone has sent a wrong text message. What those consequences are for the text that was sent varies for every text, but I think everyone's been in the position where someone has seen something they weren't supposed to, or sent something they weren't supposed to, and that was kind of the universal theme behind it.
Awesome. And Eli, where did you get the inspiration for your short?
Yeah, so very loosely, it is, I guess to some extent based on my own experience. I grew up in Israel. I went to school in the US, but I did not come out at my bar mitzvah. But I mean, it could have been really nice. Ended up happening later in my life, but I was really interested in reimagining that moment, because it is, I think, for a lot of Jewish boys, religious and secular, it is a very foundational moment in their lives. Yeah, and I think looking back, I was just about to begin my thesis project in undergrad, and I was trying to think about to come up with ideas, basically. And looking back, there was a lot. I realized that there was a lot that was kind of like under the surface when I was celebrating my bar mitzvah. So, for instance, I realized that my parents had already decided to get divorced, but wanted to stay together, just for the sake of the bar mitzvah. And then once I celebrated it, they actually got divorced. I was coming to terms with my own sexuality, and there was also a few months after my bar mitzvah, there was a really big war here in Israel and Palestine. So I guess I just tried to think, what if all of that happened on the same evening?
Mm-hmm.
And kind of like bringing it up onto the surface. Yeah, and the more I thought about it, I did a lot of research, and even though the bar mitzvah is kind of known as a cultural thing, there actually hasn't been that much of a cinematic exploration of it. And usually when there has been, it's from the angle of the parents, actually not from a more religious perspective. And I was really interested, I'm not a religious person, I am Jewish again, but I was interested in thinking about it from the perspective of a young, closeted gay Jewish boy. Yeah, and I found it to be a really interesting tool to think about what it means to become a man in Israel, when for instance, that we have a mandatory military service here, so that you become a man, and then a few years later you have to serve, and what that means for you as a queer person, as a man, quote unquote, etc.
It got me, like that opening shot with him and the tight, and it has like the green, like it just from the beginning, like really sucked me in. It was great.
Someone said, actually a few days ago, someone who watched it said, oh, it looked like he's in a womb, which I thought was such an interesting metaphor.
Yeah.
It never occurred to me, but I was like, wow, that is such an interesting way to think about this.
And Maddie, what about you? I love when we get animation. We do get some, not a lot, but I love when we get animation, with queer stories. So I just love to know kind of what drew you to this story and animating it.
So it basically started as like I was, for my junior year, we had to spend an entire semester making a film, and I was jotting down all these different like concepts, just like snippets of things. And a lot of them kind of fell under this category of like something magical or ethereal interacting with like the mundane. So a lot of my stuff sort of drew toward that. And I remember I narrowed it down to 2 concepts, which was another more comedic one and then the one that became Galatea.
Mhm.
And I went to do concept art for both of them. And I did 2 pieces of concept art for Galatea, and I was immediately just like, I have to do this one. I'm not even going to do concept art for the other one because I really liked it. It just hit kind of a sweet spot of like things I like in terms of film and what I like to create.
Yeah, I was like, I wanted more. I was like, let's have this as a 10. I mean, God only knows how long that would take you to make a 10-minute animation. I have no idea because I don't animate, but I was like, give me more. Sam, I'd love to know about the production value of this because I can't imagine how hard it would be to get a vessel, to be able to get a vessel and to do most of the shooting on that. I would love to know, as the producer, I'm sure you had a lot to do,
Yes.
how you kind of got this all together.
Yeah, so obviously Lindsay, the director, she did have that connection. So and they are called the Fire Island Fairies, were generous enough to work with us. Unfortunately, it was still during busy season. And the only reason I say that is because, oh man, you do not want to mess with a person trying to get on the ferry to go to their vacation spot, because it was nuts. Even as prepared as we could have been, we couldn't lock off the ferry entirely, or the dock at least. So on the first day, that was definitely a challenge, because no matter how much you prepare people, they don't really realize the scope of a film. But it was wonderful to be able to work with an actual crew of a ferry. So we had a captain who I honestly would say almost became like an associate or a co-producer, just in the way that our language had to be so in sync with what was happening on the film and also what needed to happen on the ferry. I mean, this is a large boat.
Yeah.
So working in tandem with her was super helpful. And we had to just make sure we were constantly on the same page. Luckily enough, the boat was out of service, the one that we had. So it was for our entire crew and our cast and background. I can't imagine what it would have been like having actual ferry patrons on there. I think they would have sunk the ship on us and not loved the experience. But so luckily we had the boat to ourselves, but it's definitely an experience and a learning experience dealing with a boat and navigating the waters, even though it was the bay. You know, we had to make sure the boat was in the proper direction of the sunlight, and our DP was just wonderful in that sort of prep. But a lot more to think of than kind of having your own location and the set being locked down. So that was definitely a huge challenge in a good way. I was able to kind of, I guess get my captain's badge in that sense. There were times where
you could run a vessel now.
Yeah, I mean, I try, but no, I'm not up to that standard yet. But I definitely had to at one point be on walkie and say starboard or port, that there was a boat coming, because there were times that in the wheelhouse it was so small in there that Lindsay couldn't see the director. She only could see what was on the monitor, and our captain obviously had to be out of the shot, but close enough that if something were to happen or if there was a boat coming, she could quickly step in and move it, hoping that wasn't in the middle of the take. So
can you just wait a second? This take's going really well.
Right. Yeah. So it was very stressful during those scenes between the director and the actors, hoping that she had the performance and that we weren't interrupting any sort of boat traffic, and at the same time making sure that everything else around us was in control. So definitely a challenge, but in the end.
That's amazing. As a producer, I know how much you have to do and to make sure everything, and that just takes it, I feel like, to like another level. But that's awesome.
Yeah, it was It was fun for sure. I can now say, they always say, don't make a film with boats, animals, and kids.
Yep.
And Lindsay, the director, I think loves all three. So I'm like, what's next? What do you want? How do you want to challenge me after this? So
That's awesome. Eli, one of our a programmer, Sophia, wrote, commented on your film. It's full of heart with great cinematography and managed to connect a personal experience of growth with family drama and social political landscape. It just really had so many different layers to it. And I would just love for you to talk about how, like, why you wanted to incorporate all of them, and when you got the final product, how did you feel seeing it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think so throughout the process, it was always the main question: who is this film about? Because obviously we have the protagonist, Adam, the bar mitzvah boy, but I kept feeling like it had to be more than that. And I think what I was trying to get at when I think about it now is that, you know, we think about the bar mitzvah, and I think generally about coming of age as something that we go through as individuals, which is obviously very true to some extent. But I was trying to think about it more as something that we go through as a community.
Mhm.
And that's why, you know, I think about it as something that is not just about one person. It can never be about just one person. So for instance, when Adam is going through that difficult moment of coming to terms with his sexuality, his mom is also there on this journey with him, and also going on her own journey. I don't know if you remember, there's the long monologue that she gives about her own struggles. And her struggles also involve the grandmother who's there, and even, you know, the Palestinian waiter and the closeted IDF soldier, or the cousin. And it's all, I really don't think we can just divide it neatly and say, this is just Adam's journey. This is, you know, I feel like it's all interrelated.
Mhm.
And I was really trying to think about that idea of what it means to come of age in the context of a community, and not just as an individual. And to be honest, it was a difficult thing to pull off in a short. I think some of the comments that I've received, you know, some people thought it would be better as a feature film.
Mhm.
And, you know, hopefully one day, who knows, maybe I'll get to make it as a feature as well. But we were really trying to strike that balance between the main narrative, which is Adam's journey, and the other kind of like subplots that are there.
I think
and
you did an
trying, you know,
amazing job with, you know, your different, you know, the B and C storylines and Adams. I think you intertwined them beautifully.
Thank you. And I think a lot of it for me has to do with just living in Israel, where the personal, the political is always intertwined. So, you know, like the storyline of the soldier and the Palestinian guy is, to me, very closely related to Adam's story and the
Mhm.
other storyline.
Maddie, I'd love to have you talk about the process of, you know, from your concept, and you said you started with concept art to the finished product. What kind of is your animation process?
Yeah, so I started with just like written, just like one sentence. This is what the idea is. Then I went to concept art, and I did 2 pieces of concept art. From there, I went basically into storyboarding, and also doing character design. I did the character design before the storyboards, and that was like nailing down the designs for the 2 characters, like some of them changing from the concept art, some of it like simplifying, and some of it not changing a ton.
Mhm.
And then going into storyboarding, storyboarding it out. I didn't do a lot of refining on the storyboard, not as much as like some of my other films. And then I ended up, after the storyboard was complete, I ended up meeting with a composer because part of the like junior year film program at Mass Art is you get paired up with another student from Berklee College of Music, and they do the score for your film, and you get paired up. So I ended up meeting like a bunch of the students there and like talking with them and getting paired up with one. And I explained to him kind of like what I wanted in terms of sound And so he was sending me like works in progress back and forth as I was working. And so from storyboard, I would be doing backgrounds, I would be doing rough animation, and then lining it, coloring it, and shading it, and just kind of going shot by shot and like piecing it all together as all of the finished pieces came in.
And what did you say to the composer? What were you looking for stylistically?
I told him I was looking for something kind of like, what did I say? It was a while ago. I remember I wanted something a little bit orchestral, something that like started out very gentle and quiet and then kind of swelled up into this like big moment at the end. I remember he came up with the really cool idea of having like chimes that you can hear in like the bigger moment at the end. And I remember I really liked that.
Yeah, I thought the music went really, really well with the short, and that's really cool. That they pair you up, because I went to Emerson, and so that we kind of had the same thing when they pair up with Berkeley students, and they're just so talented. It's so amazing when they do the work. For Sam and Eli, I have a question about your casting for your leads, because they both were amazing. So Sam, if we start with you, kind of what was the casting process like?
Yeah, so Lindsay, she actually worked for the director Reed Morano for a really long time. And during the casting process of their of Reed's newest show to come, Pauline Chalamet was one of the ones that was auditioning. And obviously Lindsay, being Reed's assistant at the time, development assistant, had access to her, and she saw her script, she saw her Pauline's short film, and I think that it was just right around the same time that Lindsay had the concept for Seasick. Pauline came out with her short and saw her short and was like, this is Sadie. This is the person that needs to be in the film. So she connected with her, and Pauline was incredible, super kind. Obviously, then she landed Sex Lives of College Girls, which was such a cool thing to see, and she was wonderful to work with, and I'm just so excited to see all the things happening for her and the roles that she's now landing. But it was, she loved the script, and she was kind of in from very early on, kind of the beginning concept of Seasick. So that's how we got Pauline.
Yeah, she was amazing with like, some of the funny parts. And then when she goes downstairs and she has that moment of like, oh my God, it just, and I know I said this, but I just felt the anxiety of, if you have that first love or you have whatever happens with the wrong text, like I just felt for her so much throughout it. And one of my favorite parts is when she's on like this loudspeaker, but how she's delivering it was like amazing.
Yeah, she is so talented. She has so much range, but also a testament to Lindsay's directing, and it's an interesting point, because I was watching on monitor and I didn't have the comm, so I couldn't always hear the takes, but seeing it, I'd see that Pauline would get close, but being so close to the story, I kind of knew what Lindsay wanted. And then in the next take, I'd see Pauline do something completely different. And it was so interesting to watch, as, watching an actor perform in that way was a lot of fun. And she just, every take was different, and she brought it. And sometimes it was really high, sometimes it was low. But always in a subtle way, which was interesting to see. But yeah, the take that we actually ended up using for when she is giving that announcement, it was a total mistake that she did that. She didn't mean to make that, like, she said it and then she was like, have a nice day. And we were like, oh my God, that's perfect. That was, in the editing room, it
That's
worked.
amazing.
So yeah, the happy accidents are always great, but also they're bound to happen when they're as talented as her.
And Eli, what about who plays Adam, and then even all your supporting characters, the mom and the cousin? I mean, they were all great. I'd love to know about your casting process.
Yeah, I mean, going in, I really knew it would be essentially about Adam. I had to find the perfect actor. And we saw dozens of kids, really, so many. But once I saw Peter, the boy who plays Adam, in the movie, I just knew it was him. And he's actually, it's really interesting because both of his parents are quite well known in Israel. Both of them are actors, and he is a professional actor. He's 13 now, but he was in a Natalie Portman film, and when he was like 3, and was like in TV shows in Israel, and he was really, really amazing to work with, even though it was a complicated process. And I think especially I was trying to have nuanced and genuine conversations with him about things like sexuality and the occupation in Israel, and like things that are tricky to navigate, especially when you're 12 years old. Yeah, and he was really amazing about it. And his parents, who again are actors, were so understanding and supportive, which I think was really key. And then with the others, in some cases, for instance, with the mom or with the cousin, I just knew I wanted those people, so I basically wrote the parts for them, and I was lucky enough that they ended up saying yes, which was amazing. And in other cases, we just did auditions and found people that were really right for the parts. And I think what I really wanted the film to be, it was an ensemble film,
Mhm.
and because they were so talented and committed. And I have to say, we shot it at the height of COVID in August of 2020. Most of them were out of work, and they came and did it. They did it for free, which is amazing, and just volunteered because they really believed in the script. Yeah, and they just made it work as an ensemble. It really felt like, a lot of my background is in theater, actually, and they kind of wanted it to feel like a play, both in terms of what the film feels like, but also just in terms of the set and the kind of feeling that it's a group effort. And they really made it work that way, which I'm very grateful for.
I have a question about the ending, because I feel like there were so many ways you could have gone with the ending. Like, we kind of all saw where it was going, but like to do it in a way that wasn't like he's, saying anything. It's just he comes out on stage, with the dress and the song that he sings. And it was just this like, just this beautiful moment. I would just love to know how did you come up with that?
Oh yeah, thank you. So yeah, I mean, you saw at the end, there was a short clip from my own bar mitzvah. I did not
Mhm.
come up with a dress. I wish I had. I really wish I had. But I think that was kind of like the seed. I just knew I wanted, again and again. The whole thing was about reimagining for me. I really wanted to think, what if it had happened in a different way? Because again, I came out quite late, like in my 20s. And yeah, and I wish I'd come out earlier. And I think, but anyway, I think that scene had a lot to do with my interpretation of the bar mitzvah, as a play, essentially, as a performative event. And we talk about gender, as a performance, and that's something that I really wanted to play with and to think about. I don't know if you remember, but for instance, like, there's an earlier moment where the mother and the grandmother are having a fight, and then the photographer comes and they like smile and like hug each other, and then they go back to fighting. And for me, those events are all about that. And so I was trying to think, what if the performance aspect of it was liberating? What if there's something that is emancipatory in that performative aspect of the event as well? And yeah, and I think I'm so glad to hear that's how you read that final scene, because for me it was all about that.
Definitely. Maddie, I'd love to know about your choice in animation style. How did you kind of choose, what came across on the screen?
I mean, in terms of my style, 2D digital has kind of been my like primary preferred style. Like, we tried a little bit of everything during like going to Mass Art. Like, I did a stop mo film one year. We did like experimental stuff, but I really liked 2D digital, both just because I was the most drawn to that, and also just because that kind of was the easiest way to get it looking like how I pictured it in my head, almost, in terms of color and like the sort of like line quality and tools I could use. Yeah.
And do you tend to make whatever you're making in school animation, is it usually queer focused or?
Usually it's at least a little queer.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, just because every film I make has like a little bit of me in it.
Yeah.
I am pretty queer. So that's how the films end up.
That's amazing because I mean, feel free to send anything in the future that you have, just because we've always wanted to try to make a animation shorts program, but we never have fully enough for a program every year. We always, have some intertwined and stuff. So that's definitely one of my goals moving forward as a programmer.
Yeah, definitely.
Sam, how long was how many days of shooting was there?
So we supposed to be 3. It ended up being 3.5. Just with the scheduling of working around the ferries. Also, just originally the film was supposed to be shot in, I think, early summer, just to have that extra daylight. And then because of the pandemic and everything got pushed back. And we didn't end up shooting until September. And at that point, I'm pretty sure the sun sets at like 7 and it's dark by 7:30 at that time. So really just running out of daylight, obviously the logistics of getting everyone on the boat, getting all of the equipment. And I think by the second, third day, we were a well-oiled machine, but it was the first day that took a little bit out of everyone to get used to being on the boat. And we had a wonderful crew and cast. Everyone was so experienced and loved the idea of doing a film on a boat. So we had that extra half day, and I'm so glad that everyone was so willing to kind of last minute be a part of it, because it made all the difference. There was some essential things that we needed to get.
As always, it's always the first day. It's
Oh,
always the first day that's the slowest, and then you're like, by the third, it's like boom, boom, boom.
oh my God, the first day. And not only we opened, the first shot had to be off at 6 a.m. because our DP was very, very consistent with where the light was. And because the trip is so short across the ferry, but obviously we were shooting throughout 3 days, sun up to sundown. We were shooting first thing in the morning, and it was the opening shot where it's the tracking shot behind Sadie, and we had steady ops and a steady cam at that point, and with all of the background and Lindsay coordinating that with the assistant director. It was just a lot to do at the very first moment. And usually it's like, let's start with an easy scene. And it was like, nope, it had to be that one. And it was tough. And that was the reason things got set back, but it ended up working, and whatever it takes, right?
Exactly. Eli, how long was your production?
So originally, I think it was supposed to be 5 days, but Peter, the boy, was so busy that his agent had double booked him. So he had our film and another TV show that he was shooting around the time. So it ended up being, I think, 6 days. Yeah, it was 6 days. And it never feels enough, but somehow
Yes.
it worked out.
And where was your location? How did you get that, where you filmed?
So it's just outside Tel Aviv, which is my hometown in Israel. And I think in that sense, COVID was good just because there were no bar mitzvahs going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was August of 2020, so the place was empty, and we were able to book it. And I have to say that at first I did not love the location, but we had an amazing art department and they really changed the way it looked. Again, I really wanted to go for the theatrical feel, which not a lot of places in Israel have. And they made it seem so glamorous, and there's a lot of gold in there, a lot of reds, a lot of like really a lot of colors, which I think is amazing, but was not originally in the location. So
yeah, definitely the colors really stood out to me watching it, and just beautiful. Whoever your DP was, the cinematography was very, very beautiful.
Yeah, Daria Geller, amazing.
I guess my last question for all of you, and Maddie, we can start with you. What is your advice for young or upcoming, filmmakers who want to try to make it in this industry?
Right.
Or like how did you, what would you say really helped you get through making this piece?
I think something that like really helped me get through it was just that it was a story that I really wanted to tell. It was something that I was really emotionally invested in, because the production on this film, it was supposed to be, like I said, it was my junior year film, so it was supposed to be completed in a semester, but halfway through the semester was when COVID hit for the first time. And so as a result, everyone was like moving online, and we weren't like required to finish our films because of just the wrench that COVID had thrown in all plans. But I ended up finishing it afterwards, and like continuing to press at it because it was something that like really meant a lot to me. And so I think like being able to find a story that means something to you, like something that you really want to say to the world or really tell, is really important.
I totally agree. I think that's amazing that like you still went on to finish it. And I think, you writing a story that resonates with you, it's personal. I know I take things that are personal, but then I expand it, by 1,000, but there's always some part of me in it. And it seems like all of you kind of feel the same way. Sam, what would be your advice?
I would say, going off of Maddie, I mean, I think once you have an idea that you're passionate about, there should be nothing stopping you. I think, for me, I would say find the people that you really would want to collaborate with and who are passionate about the story that you're trying to tell. I think a lot of things something that really stops people is, the budget. I don't have the money. I don't have this. I don't have that in place. But you'd be surprised how many people you can find that are invested in telling your story. And I think if you can find those collaborators, and I think that's just the key word is to collaborate, because it's not really about the money or what the people are getting paid. It's really about the story. And if you can find those people from the different departments to, Eli, you were talking about your art department that can bring your story to life. I just think, it seems so daunting in the beginning when you've just got this script in front of you and you're like, okay, it's ready. But finding those people that are what you want to bring out of your story is so important. And it's not as scary as you think once you start bringing in all those different heads that give you ideas that you might have not even thought of before. So I'd say, I make a joke of like speed dating all people from all over the crew, like speed date ACs, speed date gaffers, speed date other producers. Like, it's just so important because in those small coffee meetings or anything, you find someone that you really connect with and that you're in the same line of something that you want to create. And that's when, no matter how hard the days get or how many days you end up shooting more than you want to or than you expected to, it just is a fun process, and you come up with something really cool at the end.
That's really good advice. It's always about the collaboration. We just had a local feature played over the weekend, and it was just really amazing because it was a director and lead, but then everyone in the crowd was some people who had some sort of part in the movie, whether it was, you know, in front of the camera or behind the camera. And so it's really cool to have everyone there, because it takes a village. It's not just, you
Yeah.
know, one person.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And Eli, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel equipped to give any kind of advice because I'm still trying to figure it out on my own. And I totally agree with everything that has been said, but maybe I'll add, you know, we have this word in Hebrew, which fortunately also exists in English, chutzpah. And I really think that's something you need. You know, for instance, like the actress who plays the mom in the film, I really, really wanted it to be in it. And she's, you know, she's an Academy Award winner here in Israel. I thought I had no chance of getting her. And I just got her number and I called her and I was like, listen, I'm a huge fan. I think you're amazing. I wrote this part for you. Will you read the script? And then she did, and she liked it, and she ended up doing it. And so I think that's something that I was terrified of. I'm really glad I did it, and I hope I can do it again because it seems like it's a big part of the work. And yeah, and sometimes it doesn't work, but when it does, it's really worth it.
That's amazing. Call her up. Hey, Academy Award winner. That's amazing. Well, because I mean, the story was so good. That's obviously why she said yes. Thank you guys so much for coming on. The up and coming program will be available on Zerb TV through the end of April, so please check it out. I appreciate you guys hopping on, especially Eli when it's so late for you. But thank you guys again.
Thank you
you,
so
Katie.
much.